Yeah. So we're gonna talk about a favorite vampire, Rudy Giuliani, who we're thought they were GNCR in New Yorkers, so we know about Rudy Giuliani. He is a nasty man, sweaty nasty man, as America have seen now. He sweats oil and all kind of greasy stuff. He just breathes in people's face, and he had the coronavirus. Not only he got the coronavirus, he got the best scientific experimental treatment for it, and still says that I'm gonna go out there and breathe in people's face. This is a clown. So he has a history of being
worse than a clown.
Yeah, so we're gonna show that he's worse than a clown. He is devious. He led a race riot in New York City. People remember in New York City in 1992 there was a very scary race riot that happened in City Hall. It's the police riot that happened that he kind of instigate. They harassed black politicians who were on their way to the City Hall. It was a really scary experience. And Phil can drop this clip.
I thought you were talking about the Crown Heights riots.
Marched around City Hall Park in a peaceful and orderly fashion. But then, minutes later, thousands of cops stormed through the barricades and ran on top of cars as they charged the stairs of City Hall. Their message rang loud and clear. These cops were here to put pressure on Mayor David Dinkins, hoping he would reconsider his request for an all-civilian complaint review board. The board hears complaints about city police officers. Right now, it consists of 12 people.
This is what they were protesting against.
And police members. These cops don't want it to change, and they had support from the mayor's arch rival, Rudy Giuliani.
The reason the morale of the police department of the city of New York is so low is one reason and one reason alone. David Dinkins!
Let's assume this is the worst legislation.
R.I.P. to David Dinkins. He recently passed away.
It is still no excuse for the behavior that at least the reports I've gotten of how they behaved out there today. And I say that Phil Caruso and the leadership of the PBA is responsible, and for Rudy Giuliani to urge them on, as it were, it demonstrates an irresponsibility on his behalf.
The rally was organized by the Cops Union, the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, and they brought all their big weapons to protest the CCRB changes, including Officer Michael O'Keefe, who was recently cleared by a grand jury investigation after he shot and killed a convicted drug dealer in Washington Heights last summer. Just whether this protest will have an impact on the CCRB won't be known.
Convicted drug dealer? This is why they killed people? Oh my God.
And the City Council Committee on Public Safety. They'll begin
He sold weed. That's why he died.
Then in October, they'll listen to the public. After that, they'll decide whether to make any changes to the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
Rest in peace, David Dinkins. That's the environment he got elected mayor in. So
I want to lend a little bit of context to this. These police officers were in the streets protesting and threatening not to do their jobs because they wanted to be able to do anything they wanted with impunity. They didn't want there to be any oversight for what they do on the streets as employees, as our employees. If you're a taxpayer here in New York City, you pay the salary of these police officers. And I think that they have this us versus them mentality, but how is it us versus them when it's them that provides the money for your paycheck? Yeah. But you want to be able to do anything you want to do to somebody because you want to, and there should be no oversight in place, because if there is oversight and if you are called to account, if there is accountability for your actions, then you're not going to do your job at all.
And that was in 1992, and that was like the bare minimum.
What's changed?
They were trying to just establish that civilian review board. It didn't exist before, so that's we had that last report of that cop getting acquitted for murdering a convicted drug dealer, whatever that meant. So that's they still want that reality. Imagine that. Imagine they would have did that. Michael Brown, convicted drug dealer, was shot in the ground. Convicted drug dealer, convicted sandwich holding person was. I mean, this is crazy to me. So I want to give even more deeper analysis of what happened here. And this is a really good article about what happened that day. Rudy's racist rants. So it was one of the biggest riots in New York City history. And when New York City has riots, real riots, it's usually white people murdering other black people in the Civil War riots and stuff like that. This awful riots that happen in New York City that people don't talk about. And this is one of the things.
Crown Heights riots were dark skin versus light skin.
Yeah, I mean, this is stuff that happens in New York City, and like, so as many as 10,000 demonstrators blocked traffic in downtown Manhattan on September 10th, 1992. Reporters and innocent bystanders were violently assaulted by the mob of thousands of dollars in property, which destroyed in multiple acts of vandalism. Yet, uniformed police present did little to stop them. Why? Because the rioters were nearly all white, off-duty NYPD officers.
Wait, where are the people that say that protesters should be run over? Where are those people?
So pretty much the New York Times reported beer cans and broken beer bottles littered the streets of Mr. Giuliani led the crowd in chants. And we saw that clip. He was leading the crowd to commit vandalism to storm City Hall against David Dinkins, the first elected black mayor of New York City. So now
and the last, right? There's been no one else.
Yeah, that should change soon.
Hopefully. Yeah, because you're going to run for office next.
I don't know. So now this article is from 2016. So now almost 25 years later, Giuliani continues to fan the flames of racial division. So there you got it. So the two-term mayor, he was the surrogate for President Donald Trump when he was running for president the first time. So yeah, he continued. He didn't, and years later, he still hasn't condemned what happened. And he wanted to give him more breakdown what happened. The cops held up several of the most crude drawings of Dickens' black performing perverted sex acts. Off-duties cops referring to the severe beating that Breslin suffered while covering the 1991 Crown Heights riots. They were attacking. Now you got a nigger right inside City Hall. This is what they were shouting in the crowd. A City Hall councilwoman was blocked from crossing Broadway. They called her a nigger. Another black councilwoman was trapped on Brooklyn Bridge as a car rocked back and forth with off-duty officers.
Who is she supposed to call?
So that's the most frightening riot you can ever experience.
What you're gonna do? Call the police? We are the police.
Yeah. So this is what Rudy led the most fascist, spectacularly fascist thing, most frightening thing you can experience as a black person, a white person.
New York City. This is not, 1910 in Mississippi.
So, and Rudy was an instigator of that. So, he has a long history of being a piece of garbage. So, stop that. So that's what's happening here. Rudy Giuliani's history in New York City is not nice at all, and now it's unfortunate it's being unleashed on the American people now. This kind of weird pioneering bullshit snake oil thing he's doing now with the elections, losing over and over again. And by losing over and over again, he cements more and more of the narrative that, this election is not real. And people are going to keep writing with that. Even if Biden puts his hand on the Bible January 20th, it gets swirled in, people are still going to think he's not president. And we're going to still have to deal with that now because of clowns like this. So,
by the same people who said, don't be a sore loser 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the young man that was shot, since we're doing the bad cop segment. I feel like, some of the comments that I saw that came from people who were demonstrating, because there were people marching in the streets. I want to say that was, it wasn't Cincinnati, Ohio. Let me just make sure I get my information proper, because I don't want to just be.
I'll pull up the article.
I just want to make sure I get my
pages with the screen. So yeah, black man shot at deputy, held a sandwich, not a gun. We're not even sure. I'm not even sure why they did this. They weren't even looking for anyone who looked like him. He was shot in front of two toddlers and his grandmother. So obviously, what's the point even his relatives and law enforcement officials have given conflicted details. They provide no body cameras, did not have a dash-mounted camera. The task force had just finished an unsuccessful search for a fugitive Friday afternoon when Godson, who was not the suspect, drove by and waved a gun at me, according to the U.S. Marshal Peter. Waved a gun. It happened to be a sandwich. So he waved a sandwich at him, and then he killed him in front of his family over a sandwich. So
we're talking about a 17-year veteran that doesn't know the difference between a gun and a sandwich.
He just saw a scary black guy. So that's what he saw.
He did not understand the difference. 17 years on the force, and you don't know the difference between a sandwich and a firearm. Let that sink in.
Who was this fugitive they were looking for? That's just waving guns out their car. They think they're going to find that fugitive that easy? After 17 years in the force? I mean, the more you think about this story, the more bullshit it gets, you know? So this common sense about the situation. You really think you're looking for, you're a 17-year veteran, you're looking for a fugitive, and it's been really unsuccessful. You really think it's that easy? You're going to see someone just waving a gun down the street in Columbus, Ohio? This is what happened. Yeah.
Casey was shot and killed as he unlocked his door and entered his home. His death was witnessed by his 72-year-old grandmother and 2 toddlers who were near the door. He put the key in the door, was shot in the back, and he fell forward in front of little children. They got to see his life, the life force fading from his body. That's what they saw when the door opened. Him falling face first. That's what they saw.
Or a fugitive that...
And if this guy was such a fucking threat to you, why'd you shoot him in the back while he's putting a key in the door and going into his home?
The story, they try to tell these bullshit stories, but it doesn't... I think people watch enough Law and Order and cop shows at this point that they know cops lie over and over again. All these different situations while we've been protesting for all these years. Like we just played, like just go back to the story we just played earlier, convicted drug dealer. That was the reasoning for murdering someone in Crown Heights. So we're no different in that mentality. And when we say defund the police, it's from experience. It's unfortunate we have politicians, Democrat politicians, who are scared of this term, defund the police. They were scared of, Black Lives Matter before as well. They're scared of a lot of things. So now they're scared of defund the police, trying to make it more scary than it really is. So this is from experience. This is because people don't want to be murdered in their homes. We can be murdered in our homes. We murdered sleeping in our homes. We murdered walking into our homes. We murdered playing in the park near our homes. We can be murdered going to a pool near our homes. We can be murdered parking near our homes. We can be murdered driving to our homes. We can be murdered walking from our homes. We can be murdered looking at another home they want to buy. We can be murdered all different everyday life stuff. We can be murdered going to Walmart, buying marshmallows to make s'mores. We can be murdered we can be legally armed and still be murdered. We can be murdered running away from police officers. We can still be murdered, shot in the back, clearly unarmed, running from a police officer and shot in the back. We can be murdered while mentally ill. We can be murdered with a nurse while we're mentally ill. Totally, like we're like, like mentally sick with a nurse taking care of us. They shoot the nurse trying to protect the black person. This is Black experience. We can go on this list forever and ever of the situations where Black people were murdered by cops just doing everyday stuff. You could be murdered for having a broken taillight. The list can go on and on. So when people say defund police, it's because why is this happening? Why do we have these state institutions, these federal institutions are so powerful, so explicit in their violence against a population that they don't need these resources. You know, we need resources somewhere else. This resources is too much. It's oppressive. It's killing us, and that's what defund the police is about. You know, for me personally, I want the police to go Elon Musk to SpaceX and go to Mars. Apparently, there's already a base on Mars already from the Israeli space secretary chief that said that there's a base on Mars. So I think all the police should go there. So
Well,
that's
I want to point something out with this case. So there is an investigative body in Ohio called the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and I just want to put something out there about what happened. There was something specific that I wanted to comment on that has to do with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. So they were called in by the local police department, even though the local police department was not involved in the shooting of Casey Gooden Jr. They were not involved in it, but because it was a member of a law enforcement agency that were involved in the shooting, in their area, let's just call it that. They looked at the investigation. Now, the crazy thing about it is that several days later, they said, well, we want the appearance that everything's going to be transparent. So we're going to call the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation to take this case. And it was declined. And the reason why the case was declined is because the local police were supposed to call the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. They were supposed to call BCI when the crime scene was fresh. The very first phone call they were supposed to make was to BCI. What they did instead was they processed the crime scene the way they wanted to. They moved the evidence and then tried to call them in afterwards. So I found that to be interesting, because if you wanted to have an impartial third-party organization come in and investigate, you killed any chance of that happening because you moved all the evidence. Now they can't take the case. Now you could say, well, at least we tried. It's one of those things, one of those instances of we have investigated ourselves and determined that we've committed no wrongdoing. And, even if the shooting seemed remotely reasonable,
shooting some guy walking into his house in the back.
No, I'm saying even if it was remotely reasonable, which obviously it's not.
It's hard to explain that in any way to make it bad.
They removed a lot of doubt in my mind that they are not being corrupt.
Yeah,
like the BCI says that there is a particular protocol when there are officer-involved shootings in Ohio. And they said the first call is supposed to be to BCI. And they waited over 3 days after they had fucked up the crime scene and bagged and tagged everything the way they wanted it bagged and tagged. And then paid lip service, it's so fucking shady what they're doing. I don't think people are catching on to the shit.
Yeah, people are definitely catching on. It reminds me of Molly Graham. If you remember with Molly Graham, there's surveillance footage of it. But thank God there was surveillance footage of it, and it showed kind of the delay of what happened. The kid ran into the house first, but he ran into the house for to flush the weed down the toilet. He wasn't like a violent criminal getting his AK-47 and have a final showdown with the police. He was flushing weed down the toilet, and they went into his house and they murdered him.
I remember that. And there was a scuffle in the bathroom. I think he was like 16 years old.
Yeah. So they murdered him in the bathroom while he was flushing weed down the toilet. So So this is convicted drug dealer. There you go.
Mhm.
That they would have called that if there was no cameras around there. That's what it would have been.
Drug dealer. Ooh.
So this is reality. This is Bad Cops. I guess this segment doesn't matter what year it is. It's Twitter, Facebook. Follow us, Black Power Magic Hour on there. On YouTube, we have over 46,000 subscribers. Check the clip on YouTube, especially the last Bad Cop segment. We're going to post that really cool article about Rudy Giuliani, about that historical throwback Thursday article about that crazy riot that happened in September.